Hey guys, remember Legends Tomorrow, Season 2, Episode 12, Camelot slash 3000. I was definitely looking forward to this episode. As you guys know, the season, as of late, has really been on a high, and I don't think this episode was as strong as some of the other ones we've had, but I definitely did enjoy this one overall. I thought there was a lot of fun stuff going on within this episode. You know, we got to two timelines this episode, which was kind of cool to see. We found out more about Rip in this episode. Just in general, another really great one, but let's just get in this episode because I definitely am enjoying the season so far. So we start off in Detroit 3000 when we see Charles McNider is working in a lab when Rip arrives. He greets Charles by name. Charles explains he was able to regain his eyesight thanks to future technique, and Rip notices that Charles is working with a biomorphic implant that can modify its host, which is neutral impulses, and he figures that it can amplify violent impulses and tells Charles that a new threat is after the spear fragments. He plans to take the shard under Charles' protection to the vanishing point, and Charles points out that Rip said that the Time Masters can't be trusted, so probably is best not to, do anything. But realizing that his pretense has failed, Rip ends up shooting Charles, and Charles promises that Rip will never find it, but Rip figures that Charles had hidden the fragment inside of him, so he takes out a knife, and basically we get to what happened a little bit later. But on Wave Rider, Sarah tells the team that Lily's algorithm has indicated a fragment in Detroit 3000, so they set course, and when Hank worries about the future, Amaya suggests that he stay on the ship, and as they arrive, Hank insists that he's a time travel professional, and they agree until Sarah tells them to shut up. So she tells Nate to stay on the ship, even though Nate was obviously worried about what was going to happen. It's best that he set this one out. So Gideon warns that the medallion isn't sensing the fragment. Sarah has it locate the last location of the fragment. The legends go to Charles's lab, and there's blood on the floor, and she finds Charles's corpse, and Maya explains that Charles is actually Dr. Midnight of the Justice Society, which I like that the JSA came back to fruition this episode. Like, definitely they've been a part of the season, but this is definitely the biggest episode they played a role in since I think they were introduced. And Mick points out that Charles wrote Rip on the floor, and the legends realize that it's the name of Midnight's killer, Rip. So back on the Wave Rider, the team figures that Rip remembers where the pieces of the spear are, but obviously he's not going to tell them because, as we know, Rip is now under this version of himself where he's evil and he's against the legends, and Amaya complains that Sarah let Rip leave. Sarah says that they're not killers, and Amaya points out that Sarah's sentiment might be why the team loses so often, because of the fact that she doesn't seem to care that much, and also because she is so sentimental at points. So Gideon reports that the algorithm has found another fragment of the spear on Britannia in 507 AD, which is where most of this episode takes place. So Nate and Ray then suit up in armor. Ray looks forward to walking through the Age of Legends. He says he was obsessed with Arthurian lore. And meanwhile, Mick ends up visiting Stein, confirms that he will be skipping the mission as well. The former criminal realizes that Stein is up to something. He figures that he stole something, so Stein shows him an implant that he took from Midnight's lab. We don't exactly know what it's all about, but clearly Stein does have something up his sleeve. So as the team heads through the forest, Nate explains the medieval era was a time of chaos, and as he lectures them about disease, Sarah realizes that they're being followed, and knights then drop their camouflage, and their armored leader rides out. Ray requests an audience with King Arthur, and the leader removes his helmet and identifies herself as Guinevere. And you know how I always say that the casting for these big name characters are always off? This one I actually thought was pretty good. I actually like the actress that played Guinevere. I sensed the badassery in her, you sensed the determination in her, and just the agency she had, and I thought they did a good job with that actress overall, and she agrees to take them to Camelot. So Guinevere and her men take them to Camelot. Arthur and his knights are gathered around the round table, and Guinevere explains that she came across the legends as she tracked the Black Knight. Arthur says the Black Knight's been abducting his knights. He says that his wisest advisor will measure the truth of the words, and summons Merlin, who's a robed figure, and summons Merlin, and a robed figure comes out, removes his hood, and reveals that she's actually Stargirl, we find out. So yes, Stargirl is back in this episode, and the legends take Stargirl back to Wave Rider. Stargirl explains that she adopted the identity of Merlin to fit into the era. So Sarah tells her about Charles's death, and Stargirl explains the JSA's last mission was to recover the spear, because obviously if you have the Spear of Destiny, that's what changes everything, and that's what ends up changing the past. So if they keep it from falling into enemy hands, obviously it didn't work out so well. So they were joined by Rip, who said the spear was too powerful for one individual to possess, and they broke the spear into 4 pieces, and Rip took them to 3 different pieces, and to protect her piece of the spear, Stargirl fashioned Camelot into the Camelot of Legend. So later at Camelot, the team feats with and I like that this was all Stargirl's doing. Found that was actually a nice twist that this wasn't something that Malcolm and Thawne and Dark caused. Like this was all her doing. So Stargirl assures Amaya that the spear fragment is the same. Meanwhile, Sarah congratulates Guinevere on ambushing her, and Guinevere says that she was a warrior before she was a queen. She says that Arthur is on the hunt, and the two women share a toast. And in the forest, Arthur fights the Black Knight. The Black Knight finally defeats Arthur, who tells his opponent to do his reverse. Dark then lifts his visor, and Rip steps out to say that they have something worse than death in mind for Arthur. And obviously, we know what that entails. So Nate, Ray, and Jax drink. Ray spots Galahad seated at the siege paralysis, and he goes over to introduce himself, and Galahad invites him to sit. Ray fawns over him, saying that he's a big admirer, and Galahad says that he is but a servant who serves Arthur. Arthur comes in holding the Black Knight prisoner, but grabs Stargirl, and she goes over to them, and Dark and Rip then remove their helmets, reveal they have Arthur under a mind control device attached to his temple. So Rip advises Stargirl to hand over the fragment, or Arthur will in fact kill her, so she refuses to give it up. Sarah attacks the Legion's knights, and the other legends join in. Arthur stabs Galahad, threatens to kill himself under Rip's control, and I gotta say, the action in this episode, I know a lot of people say they don't pour much into the budget in the show, like the show doesn't have much of a budget, but this episode was really great in terms of action. Like, they had some of the best action set pieces I think the show's had, honestly. And Dark tells them to give them the fragment by dawn, or he'll return with an army of mind-controlled soldiers to bring Camelot down. Because, again, this was Stargirl who turned Camelot into what it is. It was not originally like that. It was all Stargirl who did, and they can change anything. So Ray confirms that Galahad is dead. He picks up his sword and basically is going to try to fulfill his destiny, and that's Ray's main goal in this episode. So the next morning, Guinevere comes over Galahad's body. Sarah tells her that she has to believe that Arthur can be saved. Stargirl tells her the knights will look to Guinevere to be strong, and when Guinevere says that Arthur's the queen, Stargirl tells her that she's a natural-born commander and she can lead. So Amaya tells Stargirl that they need to get the fragment out of Camelot. She points out that they can't protect Midnight, and she's not taking the fragment anywhere. So Jackson takes Rip Technologies to Wave Rider. Stein admits that he took an implant from Charles's lab, and he says the components appear to be a set, so they could be a transmitter and a receiver, and Stein says that they need something with a powerful brain to use a transmitter, and figures that his brain is powerful enough. Now all they need is a subject, and Jax and Stein look at Mick, which obviously is the perfect person to use. So that night, Dark tells Arthur and his mind-controlled knights to prepare to march, and Rip repeats the command using the device, and Arthur obeys. Stein hooks the receiver up to Mick's head. Stein commands him to stand up. Mick reports he's not hungry. Stein realizes it's not working. However, he notices that Rip is sending a signal to Arthur and his men, so Guinevere reviews his troops and tells him that evil draws close and hope is lost. However, she says they must rise to the challenge, so as Arthur would have wanted, they must remember who they are. So the knights cheer. A scout reports the Dark Army is approaching. The knights go to fight. Ray prepares to join them. Nate wonders if the dream is worth the risk, and Ray says the dream meant the world himself as a child, and he still remembers it. And Nate checks his manuscript, finds a picture of Ray's funeral at Camelot, and basically, we see he has definitely gone here before. So, in Camelot, Sarah finds Amaya looking for the fragment. A light glows in Excalibur's handle as it rests in a stone at the center of the court. Sarah then asks Amaya if Amaya wants to go behind Stargirl's back. Amaya says that there's no time for sentiment, and with that, Amaya channels the strength of a gorilla. She pulls Excalibur from the stone. That was really awesome to watch. I love seeing Amaya transform into different animals. I mean, it's just another power that if Amaya wasn't on the show, we wouldn't get to see something like that, which is really awesome to watch. And the spear tip is on the end of Excalibur. Stargirl comes in, orders Amaya to put the fragment down, and Rip and Dark then approach Camelot with their troops. Dark insists that they should meet on the battlefield rather than lay siege to Camelot, and Rip points out that he's already received 2 fragments of the spear, so Dark tells him to speak with him with respect, and Stargirl then reminds Amaya that she left them, and Amaya insists that doing the right thing is important, and Stargirl says her heart belongs in Camelot. Amaya realizes that she's actually fallen in love with Stargirl, we find. She warns that once the Legion get the fragment, the world as they know it is over, so Stargirl tells Amaya to fulfill her oath and protect the spear. The battle horns sound, and Sarah and Amaya go out to join the knights, and then we get to what is by far one of the coolest action scenes we have ever seen in this show. So Nate finds Ray aiming himself not with a sword, but with a lightsaber, which this is actually really cool. The way that Ray emulates this fight, kind of from The Force Awakens. That's very much how this episode goes, but Nate tells him that Amaya has a fragment, there's no need to fight, and Ray refuses to leave. He points that the Knights are willing to die for an idea that they can all stand up for what is right, which is something that Ray obviously very deeply respects. Remember, Ray's main goal last season was to be a hero, and to have some sort of recognition. And that's exactly what these heroes want to do. You know, they're mundane people, but they all are doing it for the same purpose, which is to just take a stand, which it's very hard to do. And Ray knows all about that. So Ray refused to walk away from that. Nate warns him if he doesn't leave, then he's going to die. He explains about seeing Ray's funeral in the manuscript and that Ray is basically set to die. You know, if this could end up a really bad situation. So I like this Back to the Future-esque conflict we got going on here, where this is a very well done way, you know, when you do time travel, you have some sort of fear that something's going to happen, and, you know, Ray's set to die in this battle, but Ray figures that is the stuff that legends are made of, and that he is going to find a way to stop that from happening. So Sarah prepares Wave Rider for departure. Jax objects to leave people in trouble. Nate realizes that Ray isn't with him, so Guinevere knights Ray, declares him a defender of Camelot. Nathan finds a picture of Ray being knighted in the manuscript, and Maya says they can't risk losing the spear fragment, and Stein says they just need a little more time to perfect the mind control transmitter. So Mick refused to let Ray fight alone. Sarah orders him to sit down. He tells her not to threaten. She prepares to fight him. Stein then stands with Mick, and Amaya says that she won't lose a second team. She tells Sarah to listen to her gut and let the team come before tactics, which obviously is the right thing to do. But after a moment, Sarah agrees and tells Stein, Jax, and Mick to take out the mind control device. And meanwhile, she, Amaya, and Nate will join the Knights. So in the lab, Jax gives the receiver to Stein and the transmitter to Mick. He suggests that it's about intensity, not brain power, and Mick and Stein then put on the devices. Stein takes control Mick takes control of Stein's mind. They tell Mick to rest his brain so the Raid take control of the Legion's army, and the two sides prepare to meet on the field of battle. They charge forward. Stargirl uses her star staff as a magic staff. Sarah and her teammates leap into the battle. Nate finds Ray, says that he came to fight for a friend, and Jackson tells Mick to fill his mind with images of violence and overload the crowd. So on the battlefield, the mind control device shorts out. Arthur charges towards Rip, cuts him down, and again, very much like Star Wars The Force Awakens here. I don't know why they did it this way. It was cool, though. I actually really did like seeing this. The way that Rey is kind of emulating what he sees in a movie. Dark rides over to Rip, tells him he doesn't do rescues, and rides off. Ray goes after Dark. Sarah goes to Rip. He fears that she's there to finish him off, and just as Wave Rider arrives, Sarah tells Rip she's saving his life. Ray then tracks down Dark, who steps out, tells him to give it up, and activating his lightsaber, Ray charges forward. The two men fight. Ray finally knocks Dark down, tells him to submit, but Dark shoots him in the chest with an energy gun, and after Dark leaves, Nate finds Ray, runs to his friend, but Ray is still alive. He actually wore his Atom suit beneath his armor, and such a cool scene. I love the way that was done. I actually, like I said, the friendship between these two has been so strong. It's been one of the best parts of this season, and this was a very good example of that. So later at Camelot, Arthur thanks Amaya for her services. Amaya approaches Stargirl afterwards. Stargirl says that she's staying, even though clearly, she does want Amaya to stay with her. She's found a new home, just like Amaya has found a new home with the Legends. And once they hug, Nate tells Amaya that Ray is paying his respects to Guinevere. Sarah's saying goodbye to Guinevere. Guinevere asks if she really has to leave. Ray comes in to say goodbye, apologizes for interrupting, and Guinevere assures Ray that there will always be a seat at the round table for him. So Ray and Sarah go. Ray tells his teammates that every good legend ends with a kiss. Sarah goes back and kisses Guinevere, says goodbye. It's a really nice scene. I like the way that was done. So Wave Rider departs. Nate admits to Ray that legends and histories aren't so different after all. He asks if Ray wants to know what the manuscript says, but Ray says that he'd rather make up his future as they go. So the teammates leave, and the manuscript shows Ray being crowned king. So things actually did go well for Ray, and he actually is going to be king now. So Jackson visits Rip in his cell, says that he's glad Sarah stopped him from killing Rip. However, he says if Rip even thinks about hurting anyone on his team again, he's going to kill them. He will end him. So Jax really is very protective, and I like that protectiveness that Jax has really developed within these last few episodes. So Rip isn't impressed. Jax leaves, and once he's alone, Rip calls to Gideon. The AI responds, and it seems that Rip now has control over Gideon again. But that is the way this episode ends. Really good stuff overall. Let's just get into this episode and where we're going to go from here. So, because this was definitely more of a filler-type episode, there really isn't as much to talk about with this one, but I definitely really did enjoy this episode. The main thing is now we know that Rip has gained more control of Gideon, so I'm assuming that Rip is starting to get some of his old memories back, which I want to have, but at the same time I don't. You guys know I wasn't the hugest fan of Rip as a character in Season 1. I think that his motive was very repetitive. I think that he constantly was very bossy, and I like that more. I don't give a fuck, or that low-key side of Sarah that we've seen here, where Sarah just kind of stays back, and sometimes she might have, sometimes she has very strong beliefs of things, but most times it's very fair, and this team has really created this united front in this sense, and she wants to be the one to keep things in order. She's done a very good job with that. Rip, on the other hand, just wants to be in control of things, so I'm hoping that we don't get that side back just yet. I want to see this more evil side of Rip. Arthur Darvill's actually doing a very good job with it. You can tell he's having a lot of fun, and I like where they're headed with him as a character as a whole. So I'm interested in seeing where Arthur Darvill's really gonna go, where Rip's gonna go as a character throughout the rest of the season, because I'm hoping that he's not regaining his memories. If he is, fine, but I just don't want to see it happen. I don't think now's the time for that to happen. But again, we'll have to see what happens there. I don't really know what's going to happen. As far as what's going down in terms of, Ray and everything, I thought that definitely was very strong. I definitely did like seeing Ray and Nate's, friendship. I said before, I think their friendship's one of the strongest aspects of the show. But seeing Stargirl return, I like seeing the JSA is still out there, that Stargirl is in fact still alive. They're doing, even though Amaya's abandoned them, she still is very close to Stargirl. She still very much cares about her, and seems to kind of be in love with her as well, which definitely hints the fact that she definitely is bisexual, which I think is interesting that we got into that, but that's again a feeling that I think she's starting to realize in this episode, which is interesting to see. But as far as Stargirl goes, I'm looking forward to seeing where she goes in this show. If we're going to see more of Stargirl towards the end of the season, I'm sure we're going to see the JSA again in the end of the season. Maya's on the show. Her main reason to be there is to avenge Rex's death, so I'm pretty sure that by taking down, the Legion of Doom, which I'm hearing is not going to get solved in this episode, they're not going to take them down this season, we're definitely going to see the JSA again, so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there. But other than that, guys, there really isn't a ton to talk about with this episode. This was, like I said, more of a filler-type episode, but a good one. I thought the action set pieces here were definitely very well done. The way they emulated Star Wars was a random choice, but it was still really cool. And the threat of the manuscript is very Back to the Future-esque. It's a good conflict to have in a time travel show, and the show is really realizing how to have fun. Like, it's not trying to be anything too big. It's not trying to be anything too complex. It's staying simple. It doesn't always make sense, but at least it's fun, and I definitely did have a good time in this episode at the end of the day. And even though this episode wasn't as, I think, strong as the others, the acting here actually was pretty good. I thought Guinevere, Arthur were actually quite well casted. I liked the way they used them in this episode. I thought they were definitely very well utilized. The main storyline here with Charles wasn't as strong as it could have been. They definitely could have done more with it, but overall, guys, I still really did enjoy this episode. At the end of the day, I am going to give Legends Tomorrow Season 2, Episode 12, Camelot/3000, a 3.5 out of 5 or a B. So if you guys made this episode of Legends Tomorrow, let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall, left your thoughts in it, and guys, I will see you guys in my next video, which I am so happy for, because it will be for the season premiere of The Americans, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.